it'll be fun. Some of the things will be a little tougher, and you may have questions. If you do, shoot it to Scott. You know, that way he won't fall asleep while he's listening to my voice for the 1,000th time. So it's your job to keep him awake. So anyway, we're going to work with some of these different data sources, firewalls, APs, IPS, vulnerability scans, etc. We use quite a variety of data in this particular bootcamp because security data is very diverse, and that's really one of the big advantages of Splunk is being able to take this diverse amount of data and really bring it under a single pane of glass to examine it. So, and you'll see that as we go along. So if you're looking for more basic Splunk information, a little bit about architecture, how it works, that kind of thing, like I said, we do that. Usually we call it using Splunk for Cisco class or something like that. That's a more basic, more Splunk-focused class. This is specifically about using it for security. So what are we trying to do here? We're going to hopefully answer the question, why use Splunk for security? We're going to actually demonstrate how to use it, and we're going to use it in two pieces. One is the core Splunk product, right? The software solution that is just core Splunk. Then we're going to actually use an add-on app, which is enterprise security, which is one of the 5 or 6 premium apps that Splunk has developed that you can layer on top of core Splunk to provide some additional functionality. Now, keep in mind there's nothing in ES that you can't recreate if you take the time and effort to do it using core Splunk. So it doesn't add the functionality, it's already there. What it really does is extend the knowledge and makes it easier for you to do it. Splunk has spent thousands of hours of development to develop these premium apps. That's why they charge extra for them. So there is a lot of development time that went into them. But if you don't need that development, Splunk for enterprise, core Splunk will work great in the security use case, and you'll see that as we go along. So, and then we want you to get hands-on. Sometimes enterprise security can be a little hard to get a hold of and see. Usually, Splunk's keeps that one pretty close to the vest. So this is one of the few places where you can actually get on to core Splunk that has enterprise security applied and actually mess with it. So that's what we're going to get into. Down at the bottom, you're going to see these Splunk taglines. If you've been to a trade show in the last couple of years where Splunk's attended, they tend to give out these T-shirts, and they usually go pretty fast. They've got some pretty funny taglines. Also, when you start the system from the command line, it'll throw you one of these taglines a day. So there's a bunch of them. I've seen somewhere around 60 to 100 of them. I tend to collect them. I think I've got 40 or 45 collected. We throw these things in here. And some of them are pretty tongue-in-cheek and they're pretty funny. They're meant in good fun. Don't be offended. And if you're from Canada, I'm just going to apologize in advance. So you'll see that as we go. All right. Lab access. Note the S here in this command input. Sorry. Note the S. HTTPS. This is the security bootcamp, so we do use the SSL version. So if you do http://bootcamp.gtri.com, it's going to throw you an error. So make sure you put that S in there. It should take you right to this login. I'll give you the login here in just a minute. Lab 1 is mostly getting you guys everybody logged in and getting some basic searching and creating a dashboard under your belt. So, all right, that's lab access. Remember that. It's also part of the download. The user ID download will also include this link. So, but make sure that it is the S link and not it is the SSL link and not just the standard port 80 link. All right, so here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk really quick about the state of security. Just as kind of a level setting. Make sure everybody's on the same page. If you're on this call, you're security aware. You're paying attention to security. And so this is not going to be a shock to you, the stuff we're going to talk about. Some people we talk to, it's good to just set the ground, set the level at the beginning, and just go through it. We're not going to spend, excuse me, a lot of time on that. We're going to spend the core or the bulk of the time we're going to spend actually working with Splunk. So then we're going to talk about core Splunk for security, and then we're going to get into the Splunk app for enterprise security. There are 3 hands-on labs that we go through, and depending on time, I may just turn you loose on the 3rd one and let you do that one as homework. We'll keep the line open as long as people are asking us questions, But if you are, if you need to run, and I'll probably be done about 10-15 minutes early with the speaking, and then we'll turn you loose for the last 20 minutes or so to finish up any labs. We also keep the lab server up and running until about 10 o'clock Mountain Time today. If you want to come back later, if you need to run, you want to come back later and mess with it, it will be available until then. If you need more time with it, you can get with us after, and we can make some arrangements. Either get you some hands-on time of your own. We can help with that. So again, questions are cool. All right, let's get into this thing. So this is kind of the overall security landscape. If you're in security at all, these things are not going to be new to you. If you're watching for security, these things are very common. Security is a big problem, and it's getting a lot of attention. Things like the target, people are paying attention, and if your name is associated with a security incident, bad things tend to happen. So cyber criminals, we got nation states, we got insider threats, all these different vectors or attack vectors are around, and really finding a common tool or finding a tool that will function and actually counter some of these threats can be very challenging. And even if you find the best tool for a particular use case, typically it's a fairly narrow use case. It's very good at finding, say, insider threats, or it's AV and it's good against malware. But finding something that covers the whole gamut is really, I'm going to say, impossible. But we're going to get as close as we can, and we're going to get as many tools under our belt as we can and use Splunk to visualize them. And from what I've seen, this is one of the best ways to really give you an overall picture of what's going on in your environment. The problem with point solutions is they're great at what they do, but they tend to be very focused on what they do, and they don't get outside of themselves. So you need something that will actually allow you to layer on another layer of visibility so that you can see not just what's going on in your IPS, not just what's going on with your firewall, but really look across your whole environment and say, what's going on not only in my network, but in my application layer, my database layer, what's the IPS saying, all of this in one place, because that's what we as security professionals do. We correlate information. We go to the different systems, and we, with our knowledge and experience, we tie these things together and say, this IPS attack led to this particular database attack that allowed this data to leak out the door going this way. It's tough. It takes a lot of experience and a long time to get to the level where you can actually draw those connections and connect those dots. So we want to make that as easy as possible. And it's much easier to go to a single pane of glass or to a single interface and look at all these different types of data and start drawing connections between them. So anyway, that's really what we're talking about. So modern security wisdom. Pretty much everyone agrees that the modern attacks are bypassing the traditional signature-based security components. So it's not enough to just have an ITS. It's not enough just to have an antivirus installed on all your endpoints. Really, those targeted attacks, I've seen a targeted attack, 60% of the AV will miss a targeted attack. Oh, and I've seen higher than that. So it's crazy what they can do today. And a targeted, crafted attack aimed at a particular, we'll call it entity, is very difficult. So it's the defender's lament, right? Attackers have to be good in one area. Defenders have to be good in every area. So it's a tough environment. So we want to use all the tools we can, and basically to set up ourselves as good as we can to really find these things as they happen. Advanced threats, hard to detect. So valid credentials were used. 100% valid credentials were used. So if you're just looking for people knocking on your door, you're never going to find one of these APT, or the advanced persistent threats. So number of access, 60% of, this one I love, 63% of victims were notified by an external entity. That's the FBI knocking on your door, a customer saying, hey, somebody used your site to do whatever. And 243 days is the median number of days before detection. So they're in there, they're doing things, and it's really hard to figure out what they're doing or what they have done. And it gets really ugly. Ask the target folks if you want a good recent example of it. And they're just the loudest, most recent example. They're far from the worst at all. So all data is security relevant data, big data. Really, traditional SIEM will focus on firewall or intrusion detection, very security specific data. But what we found is that there is all this data out there that exists outside of what's the traditional security data. You've got your email, you've got databases, you've got physical access like badging, you've got custom apps, you've got all of these different data types. And the problem is, it's not the amount of data out there, it's being able to look at it and being able to see it. There is so much data out there that we're drowning in. And so that volume and variability of the big data is very difficult to deal with. And a traditional SIEM deals with that by normalizing, by putting things into categories and normalizing them ahead of time and taking what they understand and reducing it down to something that they can handle. The traditional SIEM is not built around big data. It's built around more around a traditional signature-based or correlation-based searching. So they take the data and they pare it down to what they can look at, and then they look at it and they do a great job at what they do, which is correlating the events within their purview. Where they start to fall down is in the volume. If the volume gets too big, they just can't handle it. They're not built for it. And all of this variable data, all this data that's coming from around the traditional data is ignored or dropped or just not able to really look at it. So with Splunk, we can actually take all of this data, put it into a single location and start looking at it and really start grabbing some value out of it. So that's enough of the level setting. Let's actually get our hands on, let's get our hands dirty and get you guys logged into the system. So this is lab 1. So I'm going to stop sharing my desktop here. And now you should see the window here. So this is the lab activities. All right. So we are going to go through and we're going to do lab 1, which is logging in, making a couple of changes to your account, and then creating a dashboard. If you've never worked with Splunk before, we're going to create this dashboard. And it's really easy to do in Splunk to create your own dashboard. So if you've never done it, don't panic. Now, there are multiple pages to this. So, whoops, sorry. Don't mean to flash through it if it is. So it looks like this ends on page 2. If you've downloaded it, no, looks like page 3, all the way to page 3 is what we're looking for. So I want you guys to take a minute. Oh, wait, page 6. I'm flashing through it. Okay, just go through, look at lab 1. It's 22 after the hour. I'm going to give you about 15 minutes to get through this. I'm going to give you a little bit longer towards the longer end because I want to make sure that this gets done. Then that way, as I'm talking through the rest of this, you guys can be on there. You can be following along, doing your searches, and really getting as much value out of it as you can. Now, logins are right here. Also, there's a download. So there is the login ID or the URL again. And then on the left-hand side, you should have your the first half of your user ID from your email address. So look it up there. If you don't see your name on the list, well, you can't log in. Just kidding. Sorry. If you don't see your name on the list, shoot either me or Scott a chat and let us know that you're not on the list, and we'll assign you one of the open accounts. There are almost 100 accounts on the system, so there's plenty. We just built it that way, because sometimes these classes are bigger than others. It just depends on the week. So I want you to make sure everybody gets logged in. So if you don't see your name there, just let Scott know, and he can assign you. Now take that login, log into the system, and then go through lab 1. So I'll give you guys, go until 35 after the hour. That's about 12 minutes now. So again, any questions in the chat window, you can address them to all panelists or to one of us specifically. Host and presenter, that's both of us. So lots of different options. And then when you're done, if you could put a green check mark up or a yes, next, so if you go into the participant window and you just find the feedback button, it looks like a check mark in a text bubble. Just throw a green check mark up next to your name. Looks like Scott's done that. When you're done, and everybody's done ahead of time, we'll just keep moving. So I'm going to go silent for a while, for about 10 minutes. If you haven't any questions, just let us know. I see a couple of you guys are overachievers and finishing up pretty quick. If you are looking for something to do, you can find the dashboard for server activity. You should have rights to that. You should be able to see what people are doing. So if you can find that dashboard or poke around and find some other saved reports that look interesting, that would be my challenge to you guys. I'll show you what it looks like here when we jump back in and get going. So the other thing you could do is add additional panels to your dashboard. We're going to do that throughout the bootcamp today. We'll be referring back to it. So it is pretty a good idea to go ahead and get that created now. If not, we can help you with that in a little bit. So again, thanks, and we've got about 3 or 4 more minutes. Yeah, I'm going through another, this is actually added in 6.0. This is the pivot tables. This is just another way. This one, I don't think you can actually do because of the rights we give you. But I'm going to go in and look at who's doing what searches. And this is just using a data model and the new pivot feature. It's pretty cool. If you guys aren't doing anything else, you can kind of keep an eye or take an eye on what I'm doing. Or you can, if you have a choice, keep doing what you're doing. If you're done and want to see this, this is cool too. So this is how easy it is to set up a report once a data model has been defined. This is using one of the default data models that would come pre-installed. So all right. Looks like we should be about finished up. Let me check and see how you guys are doing. Looks like a couple more of you are done. So don't panic. You can either keep working on it or you can come back and get it later. But I'm going to go ahead and try and keep on track here. So we're going to keep moving on. You guys can get in and mess with these pivot tables too. There's several different data models in our security bootcamp. In the Cisco or the using one, there's not as many data models defined, so there's not as much to play with. But in this one, there is. So if you want to get in there and poke around, feel free. But let's jump back over to the PowerPoint for now. Let's see here. There we go. And let's talk a little bit more about this. This is, remember from our agenda, this is Splunk using core Splunk for security. So these are really the 5 top Splunk security use cases. So it can actually complement an existing SIEM and actually extend it, or it can replace it. It really just depends on your environment and your investment in the existing SIEM and how it's working for you. So these are some ways that it can extend beyond it. So I'll let you read them. They're pretty self-explanatory. We'll get into some more of these as we go along. Fraud detection is an interesting one. Just by using geolocation, I know that there was a state that was able to basically pay for the installation and everything within Splunk in the first month just by fraud detection. So they had a bunch of people applying for state healthcare benefits from out of state. And so just by being able to say, you know what, you can't apply for these, you don't live here, you're not in the state, you can't apply for these benefits, they were able to save, I think it was about 8 figures very quickly. And so just doing something a little bit different, giving yourself a little bit different look into the data that's already there, you can really be a powerful tool. So, core Splunk, the security workbench. So Splunk, just with a few search commands, you can actually really start pulling a lot of information out of the data that's already there. So a lot of advanced Splunk users, they just rely on the core searching. And then they just start building their own dashboards, their own searches, and they're able to really improve the speed at which they're able to accomplish things, to determine or find anomalies, to find patterns. It's much easier to do it in a visual manner rather than trying to read through log files or manually correlate across different log files. So the enterprise security, as good as it is, and it has a lot of really good features. I think last count it was 49 plus correlated searches that they put together to really expand across the different silos and really pull data out. It's not always necessary. A lot of times you can get where you need to go just using core Splunk, and that's what we're going to spend some time on here. Once we find an issue, it's really easy to be proactive and alert on it. So once you've got a search, so like this one in the example here is it's looking at IPS data for Unix password file access accounts. So once you see that, you can actually start counting them and looking for them, and you can run a scheduled search and then alert based on the actions of that scheduled search. So there's some pretty powerful tools there. How often you schedule it, what the triggering event is. You can say it's less than, greater than, equal to, very flexible in what it does. And then you can actually, because of one of the options in an alert is to launch a script. Anything that can be scripted can be launched by the alert and actually become an automated response. So that right there can be a very powerful tool. I've seen this used in a bunch of different ways. One of my favorite was I actually used this in a previous life, and we had a bad acting, which I'm sure is unique to our environment, but we had a software or an application that wasn't perhaps written as well as it could be. And we knew that occasionally it would go run away, and the only way to fix it would be to restart the process. And it used to be a very painful manual alert process. Usually the end user would call and say, hey, we can't get into this app. And we would have to go out, look at it, find it, and restart it. So with Splunk, we actually set up an alert to look for the process, to see if it got above a certain percentage. Because we knew if it got above, say, 85, 90%, the thing wasn't going to recover. The only way to fix it was to go ahead and restart it. So we actually wrote a script that would restart it, and then we set up an alert that anytime it saw it get above 80%, it would go out and auto-restart the process. So we were able to automate and be proactive, and we stopped getting phone calls from end users saying, hey, we can't get into this application. So, of course, the right answer is go fix the application, but that isn't always a possibility, at least, I'm sure where you guys are, that's always the right answer, always what happens. But what I've seen in the real world is sometimes the down and dirty solution is the only one that works, especially in a time frame that makes sense. So if we have a tool that can assist us in that, it really goes a long way. So that's core Splunk. That's just core alerting. A couple of different things there's 3 things you can do with an alert. You can have it throw an alert into the console. So if you log in, you look, you'll see the alerts. It can do an email, which also gives you access to things like texting and things like that with email, and then it can run that script. So those are the 3 options with them. Here at GTRI, we're big believers in SANS Top 20, and that's really how we engage our security practice. When we go in and we talk to clients and customers, we really want to, we find that this is a great tool. It's a way to level the playing field. And really, there are so many different variables involved and so many different companies and different metrics, everything that's going on. We find that the top 20 critical security controls is a great place to start and to work with customers. And in a perfect world, people would be good at these. In the real world, we find that they are not. In fact, critical control number 1 and 2, I find, are almost never implemented without some sort of tool like this. And if you ask someone, and they'll give you an honest answer about, give me a list of the authorized and unauthorized devices on your network, or give me a list of the authorized devices or the authorized software. Very, very difficult to do. So we can actually use Splunk to do a lot of that. There's a specific Splunk app that actually helps with that. There's a Splunk for asset discovery. So it can go in and it can help you actually discover what's on your network. Again, it's only as good as the data you're sending to it. So if you're expecting it to find things based on MAC addresses on your switches, well, you better be sending that data from the switches into Splunk. So it will only ever visualize data that's in its indexes. It can't go out and pull things out of the ether and just know it. You've got to make sure that the data that supports whatever that use case is going into the indexes, and that can be very challenging. It's one of the things that, to be honest, it's one of the toughest things with Splunk, is knowing what data to put in there and how to get it in there. It can take some time. It's one of the things that we've become very good at here at GTRI, just because we've been doing it long enough. We've got some really sharp people who have done enough of these that they can do it pretty quick and easily. But it's not always as simple as it could be. So there are a bunch of different technologies that we use here at GTRI that can help with this. I'm sure you guys have heard of them. You've been using them. Identity Services Engine from Cisco provides a lot of really good identity-based information, especially around things like BYOD, or bring your own device, or usage policies based on user identity or device type. And there we also use Nmap and SSRO IDS. These different tools, we use them all, and we'd rather gather all that information back into Splunk to give us that single point of view, or single entry into our information environment. So the first 4 we really focus on: secure configurations, and then continuous vulnerability assessment. All of this we can use. I'm sure you guys have run into this. If you've been in the security industry for a while, the top 20 critical controls is a pretty well understood and well known tool in the industry. Okay, so one of the powers of Splunk that gets talked about a lot is the structured, unstructured, and semi-structured data. So Splunk doesn't need to have or know the structure of data before it indexes. It can actually go through and apply what they call the schema on the fly. If you've heard of Splunk, if you've worked with Splunk, I'm sure you've heard the term. But it basically, in order to now analyze anything, you have to apply structure to it. The difference between Splunk and a traditional, say, database is we don't have to know what that schema or that structure is ahead of time. We can actually determine it on the fly or after the fact. So if you have a relational database, you better know what your rows and tables and everything looks like, and then get your data in there in the right way. In Splunk, you just need to know a few things. There's actually 6 things you got to know at index time. Those things are indexed as part of the event. The rest of the stuff can all be handled on the fly. And those are very basic things, like what's the source type? What's the source? What's timestamp? What does line breaking look like? What does an event look like? So some events can be a single line in a log entry. Those are easy. And some can be literally hundreds of lines long, say like Java stack traces that can be, huge, 3,000 to 4,000 lines long, depending on the program. So all of those are a single event or a single, just a single event, a single point in time, a single instance of something happening. So that's part of the things you got to know ahead of time. Once that's been applied, everything else can be applied at search time. So if a field changes, or if they change it from SRC underscore to IP to just SRC or whatever it is that they're doing, we can actually account for that on the fly. And so maybe the search goes dark for a second, but we can go in, we tweak a few things, and it now will account for it. So very powerful. The problem with that is you need to normalize to at least common denominator. So that's where this common information model comes in. Sometimes I've heard it called CIM or CIM, but it's really the common information model. And that's simply a normalized set of field names across different data source types. So this is becoming more and more popular, and more apps in the Splunk library are being written to be CIM compliant or CIM compliant. And it makes it very easy to start analyzing data across these different vendors. So like the example here, maybe vendor A calls it the IP address source or SRC, but some other people may call it, SRC underscore IP, or it could be spelled out source IP, or all of those mean the same thing. It's the same bit of data. It is the IP address of the originator of that conversation. It's all the same thing, but they call it different things. And to a computer, we may understand that as people, hey, it's all the same stuff, but a computer is very literal, and it will only understand what you tell it. So if we normalize this, there are a set of normalized fields and field names, things like that, then you don't have to know what the firewall calls it and the IPS calls it, or NetFlow calls it. You just know what you need. You could just use what the CIM calls it, and then that will take into account all of the other various usages. So these are the different data models defined in the Splunk CIM. So there's alerts, application states. All of these will have different data types within them. So these are just a list. You got web, vulnerabilities. So this is just an example. So object names, and then field names. So action, these are the possible values. It's very detailed on what it is that you're looking at. And so this gives us this common information model across all these different data types, and really enables us to start looking at the whole environment rather than just piece here, a piece there, and then doing the manual correlation that really is the bread and butter of the the security analyst, that manual correlation. Now, this isn't going to alleviate the need for analysts with good knowledge. This will get you a lot of the way and make it easier, but you still need to know what it is and what to do with it. So anyway, that's a pretty quick one. We're going to get into adding some more information to the dashboard here. So again, I'd much rather have you spend time working on things yourselves rather than listen to me yapping in your ear. So this is going to be lab 2, and there's my, if you're from Canada, I apologize in advance. Let's see here. Let's look at that. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing again, and we'll go back over to the lab. Now, there are 2 versions of the lab file. I didn't mention this earlier. One includes the answer, and one is just the questions. So if you want a little bit more challenging, use the one without the answers and see what you come up with, and then you can actually go back and look at what we've come up with the answer. In Splunk, as in a lot of things, there isn't just one right answer, there's several, and really the right answer is what works best for you. So keep that in mind. All right, let's see, we're looking at lab 2. Let's see, it says about 10 minutes to add additional data. So let's go ahead and I'll give you 10 minutes to do that. That will put us right at the top of the hour. So let's go till there. I'm going to go silent. And if you have any questions, as always, shoot them into the window. We'll go from there. Thanks. All right. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to get through most of that. I'm going to go through and kind of go through a couple of little things going and just using the core Splunk as more of a workbench. I'm going to throw up my screen. We'll go through a little bit of research, a little bit of, I don't know, methodology of investigation and how to use Splunk through it. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, so I'm going to jump back and we're going to throw a little bit more actual live demo type stuff in here. So feel free to follow along as you're logged in and poke around and use some of these commands. So let me share my screen again. All right. So we're going to start with some of the stuff that you were looking for in your, or should have been using for your exercises. So we're going to start with the Juniper source type. So I'm going to keep it to the last 4 hours. The time selector here is very important for speed. Everything in Splunk is indexed based temporally or based on its time stamp. So the quickest way to improve your searching is to tighten up your time window. So the bigger the time window, the more data that it has to search through to find the information you're looking for. So if you know the time frame, that will really improve your searches. There's a whole art to searching in Splunk efficiently, and there's some really good classes. We teach a couple of them. Splunk has a couple others that are really good to understand how the searching works and how to write efficient searches. But just know from a lay standpoint, the easiest way is the time window. So we're going to stay in the 4 hours, and we're just going to start analyzing it based on that. One of the things that you did should have been to come in here into the attack, and then you can do some top values by time. Or another one I like to point out is this rare values, because a lot of times, as important as it is to know what's happening all the time, sometimes it's the low and slow stuff that you need to know about as well. So the rare values is very important. So, but what I wanted to show you is a little bit different way to look at things here. So let's just do this. Let's just start counting things. One of my favorite exploration tools is just stats count by and then the field. So this is just telling it, look at all of the Juniper IDP source, and then just give me a count of what's going on by source. And in this case, so it's by IP. So it's just going to throw them in whatever order. But if we come over here and we click on count, it will actually order it based on that. And it looks like we've got 2 IP addresses here that are pretty active. So if we click on them, it will add it to our search. So now I'm looking at the source type Juniper IDP with this particular source. So we can see exactly what it's doing. So it looks like it's doing quite a bit. So it's attacking 99, it's got 99 different attacks, looks like DNS and TV. So this is probably a good, you probably want to pay attention to this particular IP, something's going on. So another important section here would be where is it going to? What is it doing? So, sorry, a little impatient with my clicking and messing things up here. So it looks like it's a pretty good distribution over a lot of different networks. So I would definitely, in a real network, I would be looking at this machine and seeing what's going on specifically with this machine. So we can actually take it a little broader and say, instead of just looking at the Juniper IDP statistics, you know what, give me everything this machine has done in the last 4 hours. So anything that generates an event across all of the different event types coming into my Splunk system. So give me everything for this IP, which we know is doing something a little hinky because he's showing up in our IDP all over the place. So that floated right to the top. So we can look at event types. These are good categories to look at. Looks like the NIC security is the type event, top event type. Secure shell authentication. We've got some errors. We've got NIX errors, failed logins. So this is interesting. We've also got all logins. So not only is he failing logins, but he's actually succeeding in some logins. So that could be another red flag. You know, what is he doing, but where is he successful as well? I like to mention this particular field because it's a little confusing. Punct is it's short for punctuation. When you're exploring data, this is a great way to do it because it takes out everything in between all of the different punctuation marks and just shows you the punctuation. So it's a great way to just look at the patterns in your data without getting pulled into the actual data itself. So it's a great way to explore new data types. Let's see, what else here? Oh, users. He's got a lot of different users as well. So over 100 users from a single IP. Now, depending on, if this was a real environment, I'd probably have a pretty good idea of what that IP address was, whether it was a server, whether it was a desktop, or we could look it up. There's also ways within Splunk where we can enrich that data so that we could, if we knew what the IP address ranges were, we could say these ranges are user, user machines or end user computers, and we could actually create a field that's part of a lookup field that would actually tell us what type of machine it would be. So we could maybe create a field type called machine type or source type. Source machine type, probably don't want to call it source type because that would be confusing in Splunk. And then we could look here and we could actually say, is it an end user, is it a server, is it a Linux server, whatever, however specific we wanted to get it. So there's some pretty cool tools in here and the more advanced. Interesting. There are also the source categories in the PCI category. So again, these are all things that you can use to categorize things. Let me finish this. I'm just going to pause the search because it's obviously this IP address is showing up in a lot of events. So it's taking a little longer. Let's say I only care about the last 15 minutes. Let's see what this guy's doing. All right. So, I'm sure you guys, as you're poking around, you'll see and you'll get a feel for how you can do Splunk for yourself. Every person I've worked with, every person that I've talked to, eventually it's like anything else. Your own fingerprint's going to go on things, and you're going to look at things in ways that make sense to you, which may or may not be the way I would do things. Scott doesn't do things the same way that I do, and that's good. Everybody has their own preferences, and that's one of the good things about Splunk is it can accommodate everybody's different styles. So, a bunch of different ways to do things. Totally up to you how you want to do it. So, anyway, that's a little bit about kind of doing some exploration there. Let's take a look at. Let's see. This is a pretty good search. I like to show this one. A lot of times, visualization. The picture is 1,000 words kind of thing. So this is actually a command that will actually build a picture for you. So if we break it down, we're looking for anything that includes this pattern, fail asterisk, password, and includes password. And we're doing an IP location based on the source IP address, and then we're doing count by its geolocation. And this geostats command is what puts it on the map for us. So we can actually see where in the last 15 minutes these failed password attempts come from. Now the size of the circle actually is indicative of the number of, sorry, I clicked on it. Let's go back. So it's indicative of the number. Notice there's 730 there, 409 there, 497. So the more there is, the larger the circle. So, and you can actually zoom in, and these are all coming from a single location. And this is a high-level map. We can actually use Google Maps and get down almost to the street level, well, to the street level, depending on how good the geostat information is for the IP location. We can actually get down to a building. So this particular map, this is the generic built-in map that is more high-level for size constraints. So it only goes down to a certain level. We could actually switch this over to a Google map and actually get down a lot deeper. So it just depends on your needs. So that's how quick it is to actually turn this into a, here's the data behind what we're putting on the map, but that's how quick it is to turn it into a map. And that visualization is really easy to put on your dashboard. So it's just like any other dashboard. You can come up here, save it as a dashboard panel to an existing or, you know, however you want to do it, and go from there. So pretty powerful stuff. Let's see here. Go ahead and move on. That was our section on using core Splunk for security. Now we're actually going to move in and we're going to start talking about using enterprise security and some of the things that it can do for you as opposed to just using the core Splunk. So, all right, let's jump back over to our PowerPoint. And we are done there. And then this is just the Gartner definition of what a SIM is, a SIEM. And I'm not going to read through that. You're welcome to read through that. I'm not going to read through your ears. That's really not fun. So we're going to. Traditional SIMs, they really suffer from a couple of things. One is they're not built around big data. They really aren't. They're built around analyzing known data. So the collectors or back-end database requires like data reduction to normalize it. So jam it into a structure prior to, and then push it into the structure so we can analyze it. So there's a lot of stuff that gets dropped right at the source. Custom data sources, depending on the SIM, some of them handle it better than others, but none of them I've seen handle it very well. So if you have a custom-built app, then you're either going to have to create them yourself, pay them to create them, or good luck. So, and from what I've seen in all the accounts and customers I've worked with, no account or no log file is exactly like another log file. Everyone customizes them a little bit, and sometimes that will cause the collectors to break. So you're forced to maintain these collectors, these connectors, however you want to call them, and sometimes they can be pretty brittle. So anyway, a little bit about that. Inflexible searching and reporting. So they're great at running the reports that they are, but ad hoc searching is very difficult. And actually getting outside of what those security data types are can be very difficult or impossible. They don't scale up. Anyway, enough of that. So Splunk is really built from the ground up for huge amounts of data. From the beginnings, it has been designed to handle large amounts of data quickly and well. So it can take all these different data sources and throw them into Splunk. It can use Splunk storage on the back end, which is a flat text file that's been indexed in their indexes, or it can plug into other big data stores. If you have, there's a connector for Hadoop. If you have invested a lot of time and energy into building up your Hadoop cluster and your Hadoop infrastructure, you can actually use Splunk to visualize. There's also a product called Punk, which is Hadoop and Splunk kind of mashed together, that will actually act as a visualizer for your Hadoop clusters. So some pretty cool stuff that way. So I'm not a huge fan of the Gartner Magic Quadrant. The only thing here that I like this for is it shows a trend. Originally, Splunk kind of resisted being categorized as a SIM. That wasn't the business they wanted to be in. It's not how they saw themselves. And so they weren't real happy that Gartner threw them in here. So, but as they've kind of warmed to the idea and spent more and more of the development resources into building ES and building up Splunk for security, they've actually done very well. And in 3 years, they've gone from a challenge or from a niche player to a challenger to a leader. And they're really knocking on the doors. There's some really cool things that they're doing, and it's pretty impressive. I mean, it's the fastest growing SIM vendor in the market. So they've got to be doing a few things right. Again, I'm not a huge fan of the Gartner Magic Quadrant, but if you're trying to narrow down what you're looking at, this can be a really good way to do it. All right, enough of that. Again, industry awards. They win a lot of awards for it. SC Magazine, Best SIM Solution 2013, Best Enterprise Security Solution in Europe 2012, 2013, yada, yada, yada. Woohoo. What can it do for me? So this is some of the key differentiators of Splunk for security. It's a single product, UI and data flow. It's only software. You can install it on commodity hardware. You can virtualize it with some caveats. You know, it's very flexible. It's very quick to deploy. You can have a single indexer up and running in a matter of hours at the most. So it's really easy to use. It's base. You can be in there and solving problems really quickly. When I first started with Splunk, I actually was sitting down with a director of IT, so not a frontline security guy, not a day-to-day log guy, and we were able to install Splunk and start getting value out of it within 15 minutes. And I say that, you know, it's just at the basics, it's very easy. You can install it, start doing some searches. It's going to apply some structure to it, and you can start doing some analysis. It's very easy. Any type of data. If it's human readable or can be converted into a human readable format, you can index it and search it. It keeps the original data. It doesn't change it. So the original event is stored as part of that what they call index out on the location. So if you need to go and see the original data, you can. So anyway, no database. It's again, some of this stuff is a little not my favorite way to explain it, but it's an open platform. It uses a RESTful API that others can develop to, and it really does a lot beyond just security. So business intelligence is a growing field, and people are wanting to get more value out of all this data they're collecting. How do I make good business decisions with no data? You know, you go with gut instinct and what you've known and what you've heard and read. But if you can go in and say you're a web services company, and you can look in real time and see how many people are looking at your web, or how many people are on your web site at a particular time, how many people are adding what into their cart, how many carts are being abandoned, what kind of money is being lost because people aren't actually finishing the transaction. What if you, say, have a database problem that's causing people not to be able to purchase products? How much is that costing you? All of that is data that's hard to quantify without some way to look at all that data. It's in there. It's in the log file. But digging it out and making it human readable is tough. So that's what Splunk excels at, is taking that data and really visualizing it and making it human readable. So I'm actually going to jump out and go and take you through the enterprise demo. So let me bring that up. Where did it go? Thank you very much. So let's take a look at it. And probably, you know, at any point you could have flipped over and started poking around in here. I'm just going to take you on a little bit of a guided tour of it, and then we're going to turn you loose and let you bang around on it a little bit and just to see and start to get a feel with it. Okay, so we're going to start in the security posture. Security posture is really just an overview or a snapshot of your environment. The kind of philosophy behind this would be, say you have a SOC or a security operations center. This goes really great and it looks really cool on a big wall, you know, being projected onto a wall or a big monitor, so that people at a glance can see what's going on in their environment. So again, this being a test environment, we've only had it up for a day, so that's why everything shows that red arrows and the same number. If we have it up in a real environment, this is showing you change day over day. So this means we have 1,000 more access notable events today than we did yesterday. That's what the red arrow is. So at a quick glance, you can see day to day what's going on. In a real environment, if we saw these red arrows, something major was going on. Because that means today we're getting a lot more activity than we were at the same day or the same time yesterday. So that's something we would need to take into account. So it gives us the notable events by urgency. We got 5 critical, and it allows us to narrow in our focus very quickly and to know what we need to spend our time on. Now, these notable events, they're called notable events, not necessarily incidents, because they're the result of a correlation search that bubbles these up, but they're not necessarily a security event or an incident. So rather than bias the term and bias people to these are just notable events. We need some sort of a human interaction to go in and investigate that and really determine if it's something to worry about or if it's just a confluence of events. So that's why they're called notable events, not incidents or an event or a security event. So all of these are clickable. You can also look down here and see open in search. You can go behind the search that's creating it. Some of these dashboards, because the way they're created and using macros like this one, the search may not be all that interesting. So right now, something else to keep in mind is this mode. There's fast mode, smart mode, and verbose mode. Fast mode obviously is going to be the quickest. Smart mode is going to try and figure out what to do, what you're looking for. And then verbose mode will give you the events behind the search as well as the search itself, the results of the search, in most cases. Sometimes with macros, it works a little bit different. So anyway, if you want to know what's behind there, this is also very customizable. You can go in here and you can edit it. If you think that the threats are most important, you can reorder them. You can add to them. There are other ones in here. Say you want to say malware with multiple infections. You can add that in as well. So multiple infections, you got 11. So you can say, hey, that's really important to me. Or, you know what, I really don't care about audit notables. You can remove that. So all of this can be done just with clicks. So traffic total count, let's see, that might be interesting to me. So 26K, okay. So again, I've got my screen blown up a little bit to try and make it a little easier on you guys. So hopefully you guys can see it okay. On your screen, you can mess with it and do it the way, whatever makes sense to you. So, all right. Now, everything in ES is divided up into these different security domains to kind of make analysis easier. So if you want to know more about a particular domain, you can come up here into the domains. You've got your access domain, access center, tracker, searches, default account activity, account management. So you can go in here and look at identity. The identity center has some good information about who people are. Now, another important thing to note about enterprise security is it can be an identity aware a little deeper than most. So a lot of times in an environment, the same user will have multiple user IDs based on the system they're accessing it to and from, and how long they've been with the company. The longer people have been around, the more accounts they tend to accumulate and the weirder they may be. So like this one here, Alan Sikowski, he has 4 accounts that are all part of this same identity. So he's not on the watch list, which we'll talk about in just a second too. But all of these accounts are the same person, but Pepper, you're going to have to know, have some pretty good tribal knowledge to know that Pepper is Alan Sikowski just by looking at it. But with Splunk, we can gather all these together and actually say, this is the Alan Sikowski identity. So we can treat that as one identity rather than 4 different accounts. And that makes it a lot easier to search on and a lot easier to deal with. So This watch list also gives a way to look and watch people, just like it sounds. So it will bubble up some events based on that. You can also do searching based on that. So if you've got, say, an analyst that's just learning, or you've got a business user that you want to expose this to, these lists here are easy to just click on, and you can drill down without having to know what all these different things mean. So you can just pick them from a list. So depending on what is in here, again, being a test system, we may or may not actually see anything in here, so no critical PCI with the watch list. So we'll just say all that and look at any PCI event. So I encourage you guys to get in there, take a look at things. See, this is another interesting thing. We've got Wendy Oler. These are the different accounts, and it looks like in one system it's Oler Wendy. The rest of them are W Oler. Again, by doing this into domains and grouping it into basically limiting the amount of information you're looking at any given time, it makes getting a handle on your environment so much easier. All right, let's look at the malware center. All right, so this is the malware center. So we got 10 new infections. Again, this is 10 more than yesterday. We've got allowed and blocked. This is the top infection. New malware the last 3 days. Since this system hasn't been up very long, that's why you'll see some of that. All right. So just feel free to poke around with a little different domains. They're pretty logical the way that they're laid out and where you find things. So network changes is another important one. It's really hard to judge the impact of a particular change. Most companies are either trying to or have a good change control process in place, but it's still really hard to track the results of a change back to the change itself. And so as part of what Splunk can do is look at your change control system and correlate that change to actual changes in your environment. So you can set it up to look at your, say, remedy ticketing system and look for an IP address to see if the change that was made is actually linked to a particular change control. And if it isn't, it can immediately alert and send an email to someone saying, "Hey, we have an unauthorized change just pending." So, all right. Let's look at some of these correlation searches. Let's go down to, let's see, incident management, correlation searches. So these are the 43 that come default. Now you can also create additional searches here, depending on what's important to you or what's important in that particular environment. Activity detected. This one here is a pretty cool one. So this inactive account activity detected. So this is looking for activity around an account that has already been disabled. So say they've left the company, they've closed it down, they've disabled the account, but now someone's trying to actually use the account. That could be very important. Now these are just a set of searches, so you can actually go in and you can modify these searches, change the way they look, and modify them to meet your environment. So this is how often it's run, and it may look a little arcane to start with, but the more you work with this, it will pretty quickly. It's pretty logical the way it works. You can put it in different domains. Poke around again. Poke around. Take a look at it and see the way it's going. Let's see. All right, let's go back to the security posture page, and let's look at some notable events. So notable events by urgency, and let's go ahead and click on So now we're looking at incident reviews. And these are the 5 critical events. So if you want to make these actionable, you need to finalize the search. Right now it's still searching. So if you just say, be done, finalize the search, click on the check mark, now we can actually modify these. So there's workflow built into this. So we can actually mark the events, we can select them all, unselect them all, edit the selected events. We can change the status, say now we're looking at them, instead of new, they're in progress. We, as an analyst, we can say, well, this isn't really critical, it's high, and then we can take ownership of it. These are the assigned accounts. You know, in a real environment, you would actually see all your security analysts. You could assign it, put a comment in it. Let's see, started investigating, and Wednesday, 12:30, where I am, or whatever the comment want to be. And then you can click on update. Let's see. And I just overrided my urgency, so it's no longer critical, and look what it just happened. So now they no longer fall in. So let's say, let's look at all, but I assigned them to me, so let's look at administrator. Search in the last 24 hours. See if we can find it that way. No. Do it that way. All right, guys, come on. All right, there they go. This takes a little bit of time. So now they're assigned to me as the owner. They're in progress. I want to make them critical again, just because now I know that they're critical. Select all, edit selected. They're now critical. And now it's going to go through it searching. So that's a little bit of the workflow. Okay, I only had one selected at the time. So again, you can poke around with that. It's depending on the maturity level of the organization. There may or may not be existing procedures. There may not be a workflow. It can either be integrated into the existing workflow, or you can use the workflow built into ES. It just depends on the environment and what works best. So another cool thing here, let's go into predictive analysis. And let's look at different data models here. Let's look at network traffic, DNS traffic. There we go. Count, attribute none, and spin. And let it run. All right. So here we've got the predictive analytics. Again, we haven't been running for a long time, so that's why some of this is. The top and bottom here are the expected bands, and then this is the actual real count. So for whatever reason, we've got some outliers here. So you can come in here and you can actually explore what it is that's causing them to be an outlier. So it's using its predictive analysis to determine what it thinks it should be. So this could be very powerful. If you look in here and you see, say, DNS traffic should be in here, but it's in here, now you know that you've got something weird going on with your DNS, and you can investigate it further. So, all right. Let's take a look at the event investigator. There's some really powerful stuff you can do in here. You can look at your traffic patterns. You know, how do you know when you're being attacked by a denial of service attack? If you don't know what your normal traffic patterns look like, the only time, the way you figure it out is when things start tipping over. But if you have this running and you're looking at your traffic and you're analyzing it, you can actually see during a denial of service attack, your traffic is going to climb right out of the predicted band and skyrocket. And it will do that before you start seeing problems. Now, how soon before depends on severity and a lot of different factors, but it will actually give you a pretty good idea of what's going on. So now, again, this is more accurate the longer it's been running. So in our environment, they're a little weird because we don't run them for a long time. We bring them up for a day or so, and then we shut them down, start over again. But in a real environment, this becomes more and more accurate the more data that's behind the analytics. All right, let's take a look at the event investigator. Let's take a look at the asset investigator here. So again, these are just, let's see, search for an asset. Let's search for 10.11.36.20. So an asset is just like it sounds. In most cases, it's going to be a server or a workstation, a name, DNS name, things like that. So it will actually create it for you. You come in here, you can start looking at additional stuff. These, they call them swim lanes. These are the authentications for this particular device. If you want to concatenate this, you can hold the control key down and select multiple events. There's no changes recorded for this, no malware attacks. You can actually reorder these. So we can bubble the malware attacks down to the bottom and all changes to the bottom, and then look at this particular data. So looks like Hacksort busy. It's coming off the Norse Darklist lookup. So a lot of different information is being added to this. So Norse is a threat intelligence feed, and it's been integrated into this particular, well, enterprise security can integrate multiple intelligence feeds, Norse being one of them. We've got it integrated right now. I'm not sure if Norse is one of the fee ones or the free ones, but I think it comes out of the box with like 6 of the free ones, like the SANS. And so if anybody adds an IP address to the dark list, it will actually it will populate it all the way back into ES, and now we can start seeing we've got traffic and authentications coming from or going to an IP that's on the threat list. So this device is either being logged into or from an IP that's now been darklisted. So that is also, again, it's another way to look for patterns and to decide where it is that you need to spend your time. So, all right. HTTP user agent analysis, this is another good one here. So under advanced threat, HTTP user agents should fall within certain categories. There's going to be a bunch of different ones depending on what the client they're using to browse. You know, whether it's Safari or whether it's you know, Chrome or Firefox. They're pretty much going to fall within a normal band of length. So if you have extremes on one end or the other, so user agent slash, it could be an issue. Shockwave flash, okay. wget, okay. But if you have a 0 or a 3 length user agent string, maybe there's an issue. And so you can start looking into that as well. Just by clicking on it, you can go in, dig in, and actually see where that data is coming from and where it's going to. So what it's actually trying to do. And sometimes it's going to be, So the user agent string, sometimes it's the log entry is malformed, and sometimes it's somebody in there messing with their user agent string trying to bypass security controls. Let's see. Let's go into one last thing, and then I'm going to turn you guys loose. This is the data modeling and pivots. So if you want to be able to run searches without actually understanding or having to learn the search language, you can actually define data models, and you can use these data models to create these searches that are very powerful and specific, but without actually having to know, how to write a search command. So this one I like to do. This is actually what you guys are doing on the system. So I'm going to come in here and look by search type, add it to the table. I don't want all time. I'm going to say in the last 4 hours. So these are the different searches that are being run in the different search types. Now I want to know by user. So I'll add that to the table and then the account of searches. So now we can see who's doing the most searching. Null can be the system running it. Admin is me. We've got student 12, has been running it, student 16, a lot of ad hoc searching, safe searching, things like that. So if you want to convert that into a chart, it's really easy to do so. You just click on the chart you want. Different data sets will learn themselves to different charts. So for this one, let's try a pie chart and see who's doing the bulk of the search. Looks like ad hoc is the search types. So right now, the types is what this is being based on. So if that doesn't work, you can say, you know what, I don't want the types here. I want the users here. So we can actually switch these around and say, split this by user. And split this by search type. And let's actually remove that one. Otherwise it's going to be weird. And now if we go back into our pie chart, instead of by search type, we should see by student. So admin, system user, Splunk student 15's been busy. So, and really that's any data model that's created, an end user could come in and just start picking it and working with the data without having to go to a blank search line or having to know what the search language is. Power users, we find, will get to know the search language because it is the quickest and easiest way to get to things, and it gives you the most flexibility. So that's pretty much, let me flip back over to the PowerPoint real quick, make sure I covered everything. All right. So in summary, we went through core Splunk briefly. We talked about the Cisco, well, we didn't actually talk about Cisco Security Suite. We do from time to time. Enterprise security we covered. Case studies. If you're looking for Splunk case studies or what people are using it, how people are using it, that is a great place to go. There's 170 plus use cases out there, case studies. Tech Validate is a third party. It's not Splunk, it's not GTRI. It's a third party that's what they specialize in, is looking at these and evaluating different software companies. So go take a look at that. There's an additional webinar. If you want to go to that, that's using ICE with Splunk. This is a recorded webinar. They also run it from time to time. If you guys are interested, let us know and we can let you know when they're going to run it again. Okay, that should about cover it. The last lab, let's see here. Let's take a look at the last lab. What we're looking at here for time. Doesn't really say what time it is. It's actually going through an investigation. It walks you through how to investigate using ES. It's interesting. You're welcome to run it. We'll stick around here. Like I said, if you need to run, I'm going to turn you loose. You can either stick around and finish the third hands-on lab, or you can bail, come back and do it later. We don't grade these things. We're not going to, notify your boss if you don't finish. So feel free to finish if you'd like, or if you need to run, we understand and appreciate your time. I think, let's see, I'm going to give you guys some time, and then right before the top of the hour, I'll jump back on. We'll close things out with the thank yous and answer any questions, and we'll go from there. So thanks a lot, guys, and we'll chat here in just a minute. Well, you know what? Let's just do it this way. Scott, did you want to say anything? Otherwise, I'm just going to close up and say thanks for your time, and I hope that whenever you think of Splunk or GTRI, we can help you with that. We do a lot of professional services engagements. We can help with license sizing, and we can come in and help you make Splunk a little bit better, or a lot better for that matter. Scott, did you want to say anything before we close it out? And then we can hang around and answer any questions until 1 when we can close down go ahead and close down the webinar.
Sure, Micah. Just once again, I wanted to remind people that we are available to answer questions for the next 15 minutes. We'll probably be on for a little bit longer after that. But then, if there are no questions, we'll cut it down at the top of the hour. We'll go ahead and shut down. But the lab will be open until about 10 o'clock tonight Mountain Standard Time, because Micah and I are based in Denver, so we work by Mountain Standard Time. So we'll go ahead and shut that down. And if you have any questions or any Splunk needs, just let us know. Micah's got his email there up on the screen. I'll put mine into the chat here real quick, and just let us know. We'd be happy to help you. So go ahead and work in the lab or do whatever you need to, and we'll touch base at the top of the hour and work from there.